Hello and welcome to Eden Live, where I am reading all of Eden by FREI live on Facebook and on YouTube, with the recorded clips then making their way onto Instagram, IG, TV. I say live to Facebook and YouTube, but today's episode is a slight exception in that the live web stream is not actually going to Facebook Live. The recorded clip will then be pinged back to the Eden by FREI Facebook group and there be visible in full, uncensored and unbleeped. But I've decided not to go live on Facebook because today's episode in Encounters is the first one really in the entire series that could be described as somewhat adult in its content. Don't worry, we are not going to enter graphic descriptions of outlandish sex, but there is some, at the very end, there is some of what the BBC call strong language, slightly strong language, and there are references to illicit drug taking and sexual encounters. And so I decided that because Facebook is an open platform where people might just happen upon a live stream in the middle of it without having heard this warning, I should not stream it live to Facebook, but simply have the recorded clip on Facebook then. And of course, the YouTube web stream will be linked to the website as usual, and everything will be just as we are used to it for the rest of it. So if you like, you can now hear the chapter that is called Indiscretion from Encounters in the Eden by FREI series, in the Eden Miniature series from Eden by FREI, with a very slight warning of adult content and somewhat strong language towards the very end, just so you know what to expect, and to have the option of turning off this clip now, if that's not what you want to hear about. Indiscretion. The man who runs the studio in East London where we're filming has everything he needs to be happy today. A smoothie, the sun, and a freshly cleaned lounger. His is an oasis of rare and extraordinary freedom, and encroaching on it from all sides are the capital, the development, the oppressive tentacles of material wealth. And he reckons the days of his haven of creativity are certainly numbered. Do you live here? I ask him. Yes, he says, and then, after a moment's reflection, you know, if you're an artist, you have to live differently. Otherwise, I'd be working for some client now in some graphic design studio. He reminds me of me when I was young, just as young as I was when I was sitting across from me at the Limon Lubarci in Istanbul. Except he's nowhere near as young. He's maybe in his late 30s. The studio at the back of which he has made his home looks and feels like, and most likely is, the kind of place that is about to fall victim to the machine that is stirring right outside the ramshackle rust-eaten gate, the ever-encroaching, cold commercial boom town that is spreading out from the City of London past Liverpool Street now into Shoreditch and beyond. He keeps the gate locked with a fat chain and a padlock because it's market day today. And all manner of people might be wandering in, some simply curious, some with ill intent. At lunchtime, as we're having a break, he unlocks it so those of us who want to can leave, and in fact all the others do, while I'm enjoying my moment of peace and quiet in the little courtyard in the shade. The gate now is shut, but not locked. A young man with an oddly styled haircut confidently opens the gate, closes it behind himself, and confidently crosses the yard. He has the knack. He has done this before. Confidently, a little cocky perhaps, he strides to the staircase that's right next to the door that we use for our studio, leading up to the first floor. Earlier on, Our host had shown us a picture of the series he was in the process of taking this afternoon in his part of the building at the back. It presented a man completely encased in light beige latex, not wearing some latex suit or fetish costume, but enclosed in a frame that was covered in latex, from underneath which all the air had been drawn. The man was at the mercy of our host and photographer, completely. I could kill him, he'd said, signalling no intention of doing so. It's incredible, the amount of trust. And it is incredible, the amount of trust that had been placed in his hands by a man who was willing to be trapped in a rap that could kill him. We'd chatted for quite a while about this and that and the other, when he'd said, I better get back. He's waiting now. That was earlier on. Right now, nobody is waiting. But the noticeably confident young man has stridden past me, and our host looks troubled. That is not a good sign, he says, this time only to me, because everybody else has gone out to lunch. We'd already been made aware that we needed to treat the issue of upstairs with some degree of diligence. If there's any issue, we'd been instructed, tell me, and I will go and talk to him, not specifying who the him in question was. By that time, I'd only met one person, briefly, and he was sweetness personified. I had just arrived and was not quite yet in the process of setting up when the door at the top of a short flight of steps inside the building opened, and down came a young man who looked not unlike how you'd imagine Harry Potter, aged 23, minus the scar. Do you have a safety pin? He asked me, which I counted as one of the less conventional opening gambits, but absolutely not without charm. He then proceeded to explain to me in terms almost apologetic that the top button of his shorts had come off, though I didn't quite catch the actual circumstance of this minor calamity. I could not, regrettably, help him with his request, but suggested that our host might have a safety pin for him, with which the young man concurred wholeheartedly before he disappeared. The next thing I heard from our host was that there was always the possibility of something of an issue with upstairs, and I naturally assumed that this must entail some ogre, some burly old man, some exceptionally unreasonable or borderline violent landlord. And so I was not a little surprised to learn that the issue upstairs concerned none other than this young, tall, and the little gawky guy. By now, I had met him a second time and inquired after his shorts, which he was pleased to inform me had since been mended. Again, I somehow did not quite catch everything that he said, so just how or by whom or when precisely the button had been decalamitized I still didn't know, but I had other things on my mind, such as our impending shoot, and I fancied the delightful chap's shorts were not a matter of sufficient import as to warrant my further attention. Now, with the arrival of confident lad who had crossed my metaphorical path in a striding fashion, a new layer of possible meanings settled on the situation. He had responded to my hello with a curiously curtailed, so as not to say curt, hello, in which I detected neither curiosity nor friendliness, but a perfunctory and, it seemed to me, utilitarian tone that suggested the greeting was there purely because by convention it needed to be, while he, in his stride, cared neither for me nor for the convention. I thought not much more of it at the particular moment, because there is only so much significance you assign to greeting, the greeter's stride not so withstanding, but it had registered as slightly odd, as slightly off, to be more precise. And so now it did perturb me just a little that our host so quickly assumed an expression of quite so much concern. That is not a good sign, he said, and I could tell from the way his eyes glanced toward the window upstairs that he meant it. Still I envisioned the ogre, a hideous mountain troll, not the gentle creature with his loose button shorts, and fully assumed there must therefore be somebody else up there to contend with. Why? I asked, doing my best to sound light of heart. Is this not a good sign? He's a pusher, our host explained unequivocally. This meant nothing to me, which must have shown on my expression, as it stayed involuntarily blank. Do you know what a pusher is? No. He sells drugs. My brain was now trying to process the, to me, causally unrelated facts that A, there is an ogre, a cataclysmic beast of doom living upstairs who at any moment might turn into an issue, and B, there is a pusher, somebody who sells drugs with a strident gait, who has, for reasons of his own, now gone up there to that thing of terror and must somehow surely either overcome or appease it or succumb to its wrath. At the time, I was wondering why our host was. At the same time, I was wondering why our host was calling him a pusher and not simply a dealer. To me, somebody who comes to your house or your place of work or leisure delivering drugs would be either a dealer or somebody acting on behalf of the dealer, such as a courier or delivery person. I had no experience of anyone ever coming around to my house or place of work or leisure delivering drugs, and so I could not be entirely certain, but pusher was a term I would have reserved for somebody who hangs around school yards, for example, and pushes drugs on kids who would not otherwise want them. But this, the fact that Strident Fellow was a pusher, whom I would have thought of more as a dealer, was as much of an explanation as was currently forthcoming for the perception on the part of our host that the circumstantiality of our shoot at his studio had just acquired an unwelcome layer of anticipated complication, and he said, I'll give them half an hour until 3:15, and if they're still here then, I'll go and have a word. More than anything, what struck me was the grave worry that was written on his face and the sincerity of his concern for our work being able to proceed at all. What there was that might be said to the ogre, who surely by then would have devoured the Stride boy high on the drugs he himself had just delivered, I could not imagine. Certainly, there was nothing I felt I could do, as I had vividly edged on my mind the serious counsel we had been given that we were not to, under any circumstances as was implied, approach the upstairs den and who or whatever dwelt in it ourselves, but must leave it to our host to deal with any issue that might thence materialize. My job here today was to direct a delicate scene study, and I had no intention, in any case, to risk life and limb, intervening in whatever potential horror might be unfolding upstairs, seeing that it clearly was a situation of its own making. Some people have themselves wrapped in latex and left at the mercy of their kindly and concerned photographer come studio landlord. Others obviously deliver drugs to a mythical menace upstairs from said studio. That's all just shortage on a Sunday in June. At one point, a little later, newly buttoned shorts man and the unlikely though strident pusher, together with some. Let me start again. At one point, a little later, newly buttoned shorts man and the unlikely though strident pusher, together with somebody I hadn't yet seen or met, but who also didn't strike me as particularly threatening, left the building, the delivery boy, to my mind incongruously, holding 2 cardboard boxes of a smallish to medium size under one under each arm. He looked every bit now, the delivery boy, and whatever was in those boxes, I thought, if that's drugs, then you 3 are going to have yourselves one hell of an afternoon. Next time I caught the attention of our host, I told him the good news that the issue had, as it appeared, left the building. I've seen 3 of them leave. I think they've locked up. They'd taken pains to put the chain and the lock on the gate upon leaving, which I thought was conscientious and considerate of them. Our host was neither impressed nor convinced. With that ominous glance of his toward upstairs, worry weighing on his voice, he said, "They haven't. They'll have to come back." By now, I had me a regular mystery. And since mysteries, regular or not, can only be entertained for so long before curiosity gets the better of their recipient, I now asked him outright what the issue was with upstairs. Young Schwartzman, to me, I volunteered, seemed like a thoroughly harmless chap. Oh, he is, he's all right. The problem is just that he likes to get high and then get fucked over his desk. I now had an image in my mind that I was pretty sure didn't belong there, and felt that I'd been given more information than strictly I needed to know to continue with this afternoon's proceedings. Then again, I had asked. It still took me another moment or so to compute why a delightful young man with moderately problematic shorts and a predilection for sex on drugs at his office should be an issue for us, even if it were to happen this afternoon, until the penny dropped. And I realized that the issue in question was simply one of sound intrusion. And maybe a little bit of dust too, because the floorboards of the upstairs, which were old and creaky, were also our ceiling, and we were shooting a dialogue scene of quiet intensity. They didn't come back. Or maybe they came back later, after we'd already wrapped and gone home. Our sweet, short friend or may not have had his desires met, but there was no issue that Sunday for us, from upstairs or elsewhere. That is it for today. The slightly, only slightly adult Indiscretion in Encounters, which is volume 9 of the Eden miniature series from Eden by FREI, which you'll find at Eden by FREI, spelled in one word with FREI.net. See you next time. Whenever next time is for you. For me, it will be on Monday, today being Wednesday. I do this every Monday and Wednesday, twice a week at 6 p.m. London time, which I believe is 1 p.m. New York time. And until you find the next episode, until you join me again, I wish you a wonderful week. If you are into your football and supporting the England team who are suddenly doing remarkably well, then come on England, I think, is the expression that we use in Rome on Saturday. Wherever you may be, whomever you may support, whatever your sport, or indeed your other desires, intentions, wants and needs, I hope they will satisfactorily be met. Take good care, love and let love, and see you very soon. Bye-bye.